Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Eunic Netherlands, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the European Literature Night 2021. I wish you all a pleasant evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daria. Welcome to the European Literature Night 2021. My name is Margot Dijkgraaf and I am one of the moderators of this evening. Next to me is Guido Snell, my co-host for the European Literature Night. Tonight we have 12 guests, writers from all over Europe, and our theme is the courage of the writer in a changing world, of course. It was chosen by Nelleke Noordervliet, a famous Dutch writer who earlier today delivered the State of the European Literature, and you can reread her lecture on the website of the Dutch Review of Books, the Nederlandse Boekengids. With each writer, we will speak about what they think of the theme of tonight, the courage of the Dutch writer. No, not of the Dutch, of the European writer, of course. How do these writers relate to the burning issues of our time? And at the end of the evening, we will have a fascinating panorama of what courage means for a European writer. Guido.
Thank you, Margot. Also a very warm welcome from me. 12 writers tonight from all over Europe, brought to you by Eunic Netherlands, in collaboration with the Bali and the Forum on European Culture, about the courage of the writer. And we have writers from Western Europe, writers who address post-colonial issues, writers who address the rise of the far right. We have writers from Southern Europe, Spain and Italy, where of course the COVID crisis really hit hard in the very beginning. And we have writers from Central and Eastern Europe, where we are also facing the rise of the far right and of course geopolitics. And I think what we will look into tonight is how are writers in Europe today standing up for their own métier, their own profession. What about their courage, the courage of literature?
Thank you very much, Guido. We are starting because we have a lot on the menu. We're really excited about all this happening today. Our first guest is Elia Barceló. Welcome, Elia. I hope you can see us. Yes, we can see you. Great to have you.
Great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Elia has been a professor of Hispanic Studies at the University of Innsbruck. She has been living for a very long time in Austria. And she has published many, many books, essays and stories, also for young adults.
Yes.
Her work is widely translated. I have only 2 Dutch translations here, Bal Masqué and De eeuwige terugkeer van de liefde. But of course, you have many more translations, Elia. As you know, we have chosen a quote for every writer who is our guest today. And I chose a quote because you had this marvelous talk with the students of the University of Amsterdam 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago. And there you said, well, love is like gravity. So the quote I have chosen is, love is the engine of everything, and secrets and lack of communication are what most poisons life. You agree, probably. Could you expand a little bit on this?
Well, yes, of course. That's my main theme, you could say. So I've been thinking all my life about what makes art. What does art to people? And I think a very important thing is to understand that literature is an art form. I say it may sound stupid, but now it happens very often that people think literature is just a means to make money. Literature is a business, and that's not my idea. I think art is one of the most important things we humans have. And through art, we can express things which are paramount to everything. That means love is a central issue in everyone's life. I mean, I don't mean romantic love or love between 2 people, but all sorts of love, or kinds of love and hate, and words. Because my métier is, like everyone tells us today, is writing. All writers have just words. So I think through words is the only way we can communicate, we can try to make a better world, to live in peace. And these secrets we keep, these lies we say are poison for our society. And that's why I think one of the most important things a writer can do today is to be the voice of the voiceless and speak for people who have their own problems and issues and their own ways of communicating, of living, of loving, but can't articulate themselves. And I think that's one of the things we should do as writers.
Elia, in your books you focus very much on individuals, on individual persons, biographers, and a goldsmith, and where you play a very lively game with time, for instance.
Yes.
But in your books we find also the big history, the history where individuals can have no influence themselves. How do you bring in this political, this big history side in your novels?
Well, I try to show that everyone can do something for their country, for their nation, for the world as a whole. Because I started writing science fiction. I still write science fiction sometimes. So I don't really think in very small levels. I think in very big levels. I think about our planet. And I always thought if everyone can help a bit making this world a better place, this world will be a better place in time. So everybody can do something. And that's why I choose in my novels individual fates, individual people who make decisions. Every decision has consequences. And you have to take a responsibility for that you choose, for your actions. If everybody would do that, the world would be a much better place than it is. Because I think one of the problems we have nowadays is this stupid idea, we can always start anew. When something goes wrong, game over, you can still play. You can play a new game. And I think it's a very dangerous thing.
Because we don't have a second chance always. No,
not always.
Now,
no.
the theme of tonight is courage, Elia. Was there a specific moment when you were writing a novel that you said to yourself, well, I really don't want to write this, but I have to?
No. Oh, well, I don't know if I understood what you were saying.
Did you have to be courageous on a certain moment while writing a book?
Yes, that's very, very true. Because I chose for my last novel, I chose a theme which was a very, not dangerous, but very problematic thing for me, because it was a theme about children disappearing and being tortured and murdered. That's something which I find awful, like every decent man or woman, but I think it had to be said. So when I was reading for this novel and writing this novel, there were moments where I thought I could have done something lighter, something nicer, but I didn't want to be nicer because it was a terrible thing, and I thought somebody had to talk for these people who can't talk anymore. These small children who were killed and who were tortured and who were separated from people who loved them. And that was not easy.
So one can say that it takes courage to be not nice sometimes as a writer, to perhaps take your readers to places that are not agreeable.
They don't want to go to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. That's exactly what I think. And I think nowadays we have a big problem with social media and with this sort of thing. We have to be fashionable. We are supposed to be saying things everybody says. you can't dissent anymore. And I think the courage of the writer is to be able of not following the fashion, of dissenting, of saying, I don't see it that way. I see it in a different way, which is probably not so fashionable and not so nice, but someone has to say that, because otherwise, in a couple of years, everybody will be saying the same thing and everybody will be going with the flow. Now, I don't think that's a good thing, going with the flow. You have to think clearly for yourself, and then you have to be honest and humble and say what you really mean, your heart, to speak your heart and your mind, even if it's not a business, if you don't get lots of money, even if it's not fashionable, or if you lose followers.
How were the reactions to the book you just mentioned? Did you have a difficult time then?
No, the reactions were very, very good, and everybody was very happy. Well, I really think I managed with this book. It was difficult to take such a subject, such a theme, and not turning the reader into a voyeur, into an accomplice. That I didn't want to do that, and I think I managed, and my readers thanked me for it. They could be there and see what was happening, but not in such a detail that they felt they were doing it themselves. That's what I wanted to avoid.
Time is flying. I have still one final question for you, if you allow me. In an interview, you said also with the students, you said, well, it's time to start reading different stories by women, for instance.
Yes.
You agree, probably still having said that, is there a new, well, do we need to start different novels now, as we speak? And if so, which kind?
I think probably the last thing I want to say, because I know we have lots of speakers and we don't have the time. I think women are very important, and I think older women are very important, because most novels which are written nowadays have protagonists, have characters who are very young. And when these women figures, these women characters are not young and beautiful and great and with long legs and high-heeled shoes, they are not interested anymore. I think it's very important that we give voice to older people, men and women, but especially women, because they were not represented in literature. And I think it's a very good thing in literature and in cinema.
So we're looking forward to this new novel of yours about a 100-year-old woman which has had a wonderful life and still has a wonderful life, probably.
You'll get it in about 9 months' time, because it's ready. It has to be published.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having been with us, Elia. And we will read at least the eeuwige terugkeer van de liefde, because we should have been talking about that as well for a very long time. And Bal Masqué and De kleur van de liefde has been translated as well in Dutch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye.
you for having me. Bye.
And we also want to remind that after tonight's session and emission, that the recorded interview with Elia Barceló will be made available on the Bali website. The interview that she did with students from our university. We'd now like to invite Ramūnas Bogdanas and Moni Stanila to the virtual stage, I should say. Yeah. Ramūnas, good evening. And
good evening.
And Moni, are you with us?
Yes, I am here. Good evening.
Hello. So let me first briefly introduce you. Ramūnas Bogdanas is a Lithuanian writer whose career goes a very long way back, showing actual political courage still under the Soviet regime in the 1980s and becoming part of the Lithuanian struggle for independence. And he is now the celebrated author of a trilogy of novels that deals with the conflict and the war in the Ukraine. And also very active in Lithuania as a political commentator. Moni Stanila is a celebrated poet from Romania, but currently living in the Republic of Moldova in the city of Chișinău, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, it is.
And Moni is a poet and is also the author of a biographical novel on, as we would say in Dutch, Brancusi, the sculptor, but in Romanian, as I understand, Brancusi. Yeah. So, very warm welcome to you. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to start with you, Ramūnas. I mentioned in the introduction your political activism in the 1980s. Now, that seems like a long time ago. And I was meaning to ask you, having had such a long career in politics, what did courage mean to you back then, when direct political courage was demanded? And what does it mean today for you when Lithuania is part of the European Union and in a totally different situation?
You know, Guido, I would say it means the same, in fact, because it's very difficult. I was thinking what courage means. It's very difficult to say in the short terms. But what is important that in your life you must do what your heart tells you to do. You must choose the way which allows you to sleep well in your coming nights, but not different.
Yeah. So you slept well in the 80s, and you're sleeping well now.
Yeah, because I'm trying to be sincere, and I'm trying to show what I really do feel and what I think about. It doesn't matter. It is pleasant or unpleasant. I can tell to my friends unpleasant things. I can tell to my enemies pleasant things. But the most important thing is to be open and sincere.
Sincerity, I think, might be a key word when we are discussing courage.
Yeah, but it also it is not the absolute. Because we can be sincere fools as well. Many foolish things I done with sincere hearts. So we cannot say that if you are sincere, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I think the important part of this is your critical thinking. Yeah. What I wrote when you asked me to describe in one sentence what I think about this, it is that if you want to be a writer in that meaning, you should not just follow the choir of mainstream, but you should try to maintain your critical thinking and avoid to be like all others. If it corresponds, that's okay. It is not that by no means you must be different. That is already trying to present yourself just as the extremely important person who is absolutely different from the others. This is not courage, I would say.
Yeah.
Courage is talking about and thinking and acting according to really simple things. Like in 1990s, my goal was freedom of my country, and it's a very simple thing. We want to be free. That's how you behave. I behave this and that way.
Moni,
and when I write, I do exactly the same. Yeah. I'm writing about Ukrainians. I know the problems with the corruption. Though I love these people, I wish them all the best, but I describe that, point them about this. Yeah. They are angry about that. Yeah. But anyway, I'm trying to help them this way.
Yeah. We will certainly talk about your novel later. Perhaps if I can first ask Moni, as I said, you are in Moldova, in Chișinău, and where, from your point of view, being a Romanian poet in Moldova, where is Europe right now? Is Europe in the right place?
I think Europe now it's in dreams for half of the Moldavans. I hope to live the second enters in Europe, because I made it first in Romania, and of course here is a very strange place, and it's Ramūnas talks so well about what the fight for the independence was the meaning in the communism in Romania also, and in Moldova with perestroika, and somehow I feel in the Moldova it's still needed. It's still not put it in his own base. It's still very difficult. We have a lot of problems here, and it's not the reason for which I came here. But somehow, for a writer, it's like a golden mine somehow, because when a society is going so wrong, you could feel, not just see, but even feel it, and it became more personal. And I also work like editorialist, like a columnist in a newspaper in Chișinău for 8 years. And it was really difficult to feel and to empathize with the people who try to make good things here in Moldova, which is how we know, after Ukraine, and now the second poorest country in the Europe.
Yeah. For both of you, you are living in countries close to areas where political freedom is not self-evident. And from that perspective, from your perspective, looking at Europe, is Europe courageous enough? Or is the European Union courageous enough to show, you know, the value of the things that we share in Europe, the common values? What do you think, Ramūnas?
Well, to be sincere,
of course,
we mentioned the word, Europe is quite sleepy, because it looks quite remote, I presume. These eastern borders of EU are pretty far away from Amsterdam. And well, I've been visiting the NATO headquarters. I remember the officers there telling, look, we were serving here when the Russian tanks were standing in East Berlin, which is 200 kilometers from us. Now they're 2,000 kilometers away from us. Can you see the difference? Well, but it is not only geography. If I remind you the case of MH17 of 2014, yeah, which carried away almost 300 lives of Dutch people, it appears that the world is not that big, and the places which seem to be remote are already standing at your house.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we must think about all these things that they are really close to us. Not geography, not the miles, not kilometers mean. Yeah. The understanding and the emotional relation means. I think that is important. Like, we living here on the eastern border of the EU, we must realize what the Greeks or Italians feel about the problems of illegal immigration. On the same way, they should realize what feelings we have about the aggressive behavior of Russia next to our borders. Yeah. Yeah. This is mutual. Yeah. You are relatively safe, but that is not always. As the case I mentioned, it can happen always.
What is, of course, vital for that is that writers and audiences from all parts of Europe listen to each other. And I think we could have a very long discussion about it. But I also want to open up another theme. And Moni, for this, I would like to invite you to read your short poem that we agreed upon that you would read. The poem with the title, I Haven't Born for a Man.
One moment. I haven't born for no man. In our family, there are only powerful people. They are all powerful, even the children. I am the only one intravenously nourished for a couple of years. And in my womb, there is a silence like in the sky. I haven't born for no man. The man I have loved only let me some lyrics whispered in the wedding eves. And then there was that other time when I wanted to bear for one night to a stranger. My uterus descended like a balloon and flew over the houses. I ran after it like I was the Wizard of Oz. Today, I passed by the man of our family. With my face, I feel in my back the anger. I am Kazantzaki's widow, and behind me is, instead of a child, a goat is coming.
Thank you, Moni.
Thank you.
I invited you to read this poem because I think it is a feminist poem. And would you like to expand on that? The freedom of women these days in a couple of countries in the European Union is no longer self-evident. And do you feel, as a poet, and sincerity, I think, is an important value for a poet, do you feel called upon to address this in your work?
Oh yes, it's a very difficult question, because it's exactly how Ramūnas said about Europe. You asked before, if we feel the Europe is courageous enough, and I could say no, but for us it's better to be closer with Europe than with Russia, and somehow all these very delicate matters like feminism, it's feeling in the same way. It's you really have to be a powerful woman for have your place in a society here, and somehow I have a joke about it, and I tell to the people when I meet and we talk about the literary club, what I make here with young people in Chisinau or something, and I said yes, because I was grow up in the mountains. That means exactly like in my poem, you're not you're not a weak woman, you are Kazantzaki's woman. And I made this reference to Kazantzakis because I mean exactly the condition of Balkanic woman who's a lot away from West Europe or I don't know, some better places. And for me, it works because I'm strong and I'm maybe a little bit too loud, but it's difficult to work for everyone. We have so many very sensitive and very talented writers, and not just writers. I mean, the women in all the field, and somebody must have a voice for them. And it's not happening still in not now in this country.
Moni, you are a poet. I'm just curious to know, because I don't know, maybe more people don't know, what is the situation of poetry in your country? For instance, there is another writer who will be speaking to us tonight who said, well, everything I put on Twitter, I'm getting harassed over this. But if I write a poem, nobody knows and nobody gets a reaction. How is that for you? Is poetry an important means for your opinion?
This is a very good question, because I listened to Elia before, and she said people think we became a writer for the benefit. Oh, this is not the case in Moldova, of course. You have to go to work. You cannot live writing. But and if I put a poem, of course, I have less appreciation than when I put some thoughts about, let's say now, about the Euro Championship in football, which I'm very involved with, emotionally, of course. But we still have this kind of events. Literary clubs, cynical meetings with young writers, and we do it. We know financial support or something, and I really believe that it's a way for the poetry, but we have to be realistic, and we have to recognize that we have just a small line of fans. We don't get to the mass.
The masses.
When I wrote the novel about Burnt Bush, I sell more better. Let's say it like that. With poetry, it's difficult, but we don't have to give up, because every important thing in this world right now, it's difficult to obtain.
No, you should never give up on poetry.
No, I will not.
No, and neither on novels, Mr. Bogdanas. Yeah. I think, I'm afraid...
Well, poetry is, can I say a remark? I think poetry is like a salt in our life.
Yeah.
It is necessity, but that doesn't mean it must be a lot of it.
I just want to, there are podcasts about, with both of you, made by our students, and also the exchange of letters that you had before this evening will be made available tonight. So people who want to read more about you and from you will be able to do so after tonight's session. I want to thank both of you very, very much for being here. And
thank you too.
We'll follow you with great interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we are having our next guest from Germany. Welcome, Olivia Wenzel. I hope you are there somewhere. Great to have you in any case.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi, Olivia. Hi.
Hello, Olivia.
Olivia Wenzel is a playwright, a musician, and really the author of 100 Kronkelwege Angst. In German, 1000 Serpentinen Angst. And her book has been translated into Dutch by Chris Lauwerijs and Isabelle Schoepen. And it is a very remarkable novel in many, many ways, Olivia. It has got a lot of attention in Germany, and I think every time your translation has been published, you have had a lot of attention. And I completely understand, because I really was, impressed by your book. First and foremost, maybe because of the form you chose. It is sometimes a very angry monologue, and then it's an emotional dialogue, and it's a mix of questions and answers. And as a reader, one asks oneself, who is who, and who is speaking, and who is giving the answer, and who is asking the questions. It's a novel which takes place at various spots in the world, in 3 parts. And what is really amazing is that it's a novel with a very high pace. It's a very high rhythm. It's like a music composition in a way. Could you maybe explain to us why you chose this rhythm for your book? Where does it come from?
Yeah, I think it comes from the fact, hello, it's nice to be here. I sweat like a pig because I'd closed the windows so you will not hear the sounds outside because it's soccer and it's 36 degrees. 36 degrees in my apartment. I chose this form, or maybe it chose me, because I used to write dialogues quite a lot. I used to make music. And then I was in the US in 2016 when Trump was elected. And then I also briefly met Ta-Nehisi Coates, the author of Between the World and Me. This was my first contact with autofiction. I felt very inspired and desperate at the same time because of Trump. And then I started this forum, but I did not think that this could be a novel. It was 8 pages, and then publishers found me later on.
Yeah.
Now, the reader meets your main character in a numerous contexts. She is a person of color living in East Germany for a great part of her life. And she's thinking about identity, about nationality. Could you say something about who she is?
Yeah, I think the easiest answer is she's an avatar of me. I programmed this world where I let her navigate through very consciously. I do it, but it's not me. But it's based on a lot of things that I have experienced or the people around me did. So this narrator has a mother who used to be a punk in the former GDR, got imprisoned, is not so well and not able to really show her love. This narrator has a dead twin brother. Maybe I shouldn't spoil too much, but let's say there's a lot of pain in this book. Racism is a topic that pops up quite often in different shapes. And the book looks also a bit on the continuities of racism throughout the world or throughout what the Black body experiences. And this book was quite a ride to write it.
Now, you have sent us a link to a YouTube film, and we're very happy to watch it. It is Flying Lotus Until the Quiet Comes. Why is it important for you to show this video tonight?
I think I chose it because the novel is finished, but I still am thinking about this weird dilemma I find myself in. The first thing is how to speak of violence without reproducing it. And the other thing I often wonder about is this dilemma of that you use trauma, may it be personal, may it be collective, and pain, and then you aestheticize. How do you say it? Aestheticize it, or you use it and with creativity, and you make it somehow pretty. And I think this is also what I did in order to touch people, but not touch them gently, but also fuck them. I think that my courage is to also fuck people. And I chose this video because it touches me in very different ways. I find it impressive and disturbing. And will I have time after the video? Or
Yes. We're now going to look, and then you can continue afterwards if you would like.
Yeah.
All right, see you in a bit.
Dream of love and light and laughter, love,
Until the quiet comes, Olivia.
Until the quiet comes, yes. I was very quiet after I saw this the first time. My clock says I have 30 seconds, so maybe I'll be quick. This video is important to me. Yeah, maybe, I think you saw it, why? But I thought a bit about this courage topic again. And I think I've never been an activist, and I would feel a bit vain to say I had a lot of courage writing this book. Of course, oftentimes I was courageous, I was afraid of Nazis, all that shit. There's a lot of stuff in it that would provoke right-wing people. But I think the rage in the courage is what is really important to me, and what really fuels my writing. This book is not full of anger, but I think the rage is what's the powerhouse, and the courage might come as a side effect.
I think Guido would love to ask you a final question.
Yeah, you were, after the impressive video, also you spoke about the challenge to how to write about violence without reproducing it. And I was wondering, how did you solve this in your novel? Because at the heart of the novel is there's violence and the awful effects of it. So how did you solve this in the novel?
I could not solve it. I could not yet. I'm still figuring it out. Let's say, I chose twice the N-word. I guess you have this debate in the Netherlands as well. And this is clearly violence in the language. I could elaborate on that, but this would be too much time. But I think the main violence in this book, and this is maybe what I also wanted to show, is very often the threat of being hurt or the threat of getting harmed, and not so that it then really happens. So this is what you can find a lot in there. But yeah, I have not solved it now. I was just on a talk with Janet Ehlers in Denmark. She's this woman who did in Copenhagen this huge statue of an African queen next to. She's an awesome artist. And she as well, we spoke about this quite long, and I felt like always when you work with something that is also so personal, like racism, because you are affected by it, there's no way out of going through that pain again as you write it.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having been with us today, Olivia. And
thank you too.
And we recommend your book, 100 Kronkelwegen Angst. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We are now going to the United Kingdom, and also a little bit to Trinidad, to Monique Roffey, who can't be with us here tonight. But we do have a pre-recorded interview, again, organized in collaboration with Amsterdam University. Monique Roffey is a novelist, amongst others shortlisted for the Orange Prize. And we specifically spoke to her about her latest novel, The Mermaid of Black Conch, which is a wonderful book, and Monique will open by reading a short excerpt from it.
"That thing's about to come up," shouted the father. "Son of a goddamn bitch. It's coming up. Keep your rod up." The flat, dark sea broke open, and the mermaid rose up and out of the water, her hair flying like a nest of cables, her arms flung backwards in the jump, her body glistening with scales and her tail flailing, huge and muscular, like that of a creature from the deepest part of the ocean. She beat up and out, arcing through the air, so she flipped on her back. The men saw her head, her breasts, her belly, the pubic bone of a woman where it met the tail of a glistening fish. "Jesus Christ!" shouted Thomas Clayson. Nysa crossed himself. The black conch men gasped. "Cut the line!" shouted Nysa Country. "Cut the goddamn line!" All 5 men were horrified as she hit the water thrashing. Her mouth was bloody and she'd only just started to fight. on the end of Hank Clayson's rod was a wild creature, furious to be so caught.
I would like to ask you in that respect, the theme of our European Literature Night is the courage of the writer. In what way do you think women writers need courage nowadays, especially you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I do think that women writers need courage. Somebody said to me recently, because I've been writing for 20 years. So I started in my 30s at the turn of the millennium. And I know for a fact things have changed dramatically in 20 years. But when I started out, I remember sort of announcing to my family and friends, I'm going to write properly now. It was like, only men do that, nobody, people kind of like rolled their eyes. It's like, you're never going to make it. You're ridiculous. You didn't go to Oxford or Cambridge. You're not clever enough. You don't have it in you. You won't make it. And it's too hard and only men make it. And these days things have changed. I also had a big break about 10 years ago with the Orange Prize. And I still think that if the Orange Prize hadn't noticed one of my books 10 years ago, I might not be here. So the Orange Prize, which is now the Women's Prize in the UK, was basically set up because there were so few women appearing on prize lists, like the Booker Prize. So, and still to this day, I don't know if men read women's fiction or literary fiction written by women. I still think there's a long way to go. Even though these days, what we're seeing is a huge upsurge of women writing in Europe, in the UK, across the world. It's still tough because, I don't have children. And I think one of the reasons why I don't have children is because I've been writing 7 or 8 books. So at some point when I was younger, in my 30s, I kind of remember I was with somebody and he's like, well, do you want children? And I was like, not really. Because so in a way it's very hard. It's hard for women because it's, children, how do you raise children and write books and have,
And if we look at the content, the themes of your work, do you in a certain way think in beforehand, there are subjects I do not want to touch upon because there is a kind of auto-censorship? Or do you feel free to tackle any subject you want to write about?
There are definitely subjects I don't want to tackle. I don't think are mine to tackle. I'm conscious that I come from a middle-class, privileged, light skin. I have privilege. So I was born into privilege. So I probably would not set a book in a slum or in a very poor part of a country that I know well, unless I had a bloody good reason to, because I feel, and there are parts of Trinidad that I don't know. And there are other Caribbean writers who write about those parts of Trinidad. So I'm metrosexual. I live in London and I live in Port of Spain. So I love cities. I'm not a country person. So I'm not going to write a book about farming. I'm not going to necessarily write a book set in rural England or rural Trinidad or, poverty-stricken favela. And I probably wouldn't really, I have written about Islam. I have written about an Islamic uprising in Trinidad, but that was like, and I spent a long time talking to my psychotherapist about whether I should do it or not. So there is definitely things that I just don't feel of places that I would go. Yeah, definitely. And I wonder, I think many writers probably feel the same way.
Yeah, I'm still intrigued by your answer to Margot's question about the courage of the writer, because it seems to me that the themes you're describing and the themes that you're shying away from are really motivated by a literary logic and not so much by a political logic. So you only write about those things that you can write about convincingly, if I understand you correctly, either because you know the context very well, or is that so, or is there also a political angle here? I'm also asking this because I do think that your latest novel, in a sense, as
as light and as literary as it is, to me, it's also a very political novel.
Yeah, I mean, the politics of this book, I know intimately. So I'm in my comfort zone in this book. I have so should I write Black characters? Yeah, why not? I have lots of Black friends and colleagues and co-workers. I come from a Black country, so I don't live in Trinidad in a little white enclave, little white neighborhood. It's not even possible to live like that. So can I write Black characters? Yes, because I have Black people in my life who are intimate and who I'm friendly with, and in many types of friends. Can I write about mermaids? Yeah. Can I write a sympathetic white character? Yeah. Can I write a non-sympathetic Black woman? Yeah, why not? Someone's got to be the baddie. You know, I've seen Priscilla's in many small villages. There's nothing in that book that I'm not comfortable with writing or I don't know well. Mm-hmm. I guess a small fishing village, I'm not from there, but I know this place well. I've been there many times. What I'm talking about is, like, for example, I have many places to write in Trinidad. Some I know really well and some I'm a visitor. And there's another place that I write in Trinidad, which is in central Trinidad, where there's a big population of Indo-Trinidadians, and it's very, very poor, and it's where people grow sugarcane, or they used to. And it's really different there. It has a whole different, the community is impenetrable. There's a high percentage of violence, domestic violence. And I'm an outsider there. I'm really, really, really not part of that. Could never be part of where this place is. I wouldn't try and write anything set there. There's no way in. That I'm excluded from that community. I'm not part of that community. And to write about that community would be very odd.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is what I mean about there are places that I wouldn't go because I wouldn't know how to go. I'm not invited in. I'm too different. I'm too different. And there are this kind of place has its own writers. That thing's about to come up, shouted the father. Son of a goddamn bitch. It's coming up. Keep your rod up. The flat, dark sea broke open and the mermaid rose up and out of the water, her hair flying like a nest.
Yeah. So the full interview with Monique Roffey is also going to be available online after tonight's evening.
From the English-speaking Caribbean, Monique Roffey, to a Dutch and French-speaking author. We welcome Laurent Petitmangin and we welcome Max Temmerman. Laurent Petitmangin is the author of so far one book, Ce qu'il faut de nuit, translated into Dutch by Lola Bertels as De donkerste nacht. The book tells the story of a father who raises his two sons alone after the mother died. And the conflict in the novel is really about a political choice. It's about the political choice of the eldest son. Hi, there you are. Welcome, welcome. Wonderful you are joining us.
Welcome.
The conflict in the novel, De donkerste nacht, is about the political choice of the eldest son, extreme right-wing, and in fact how the father is coping with that. The father is a leftist from his youth, so you imagine the difficult dilemma in which he is finding himself. Warm welcome to you as well, Max. Max Temmerman is a Belgian poet and a writer. He's the author of a novel entitled Conifers, but he published before that several poetry books on life, on love, on what we are as a human being, actually. Max, you published a lot of poetry books. What makes poetry such an interesting format for you?
I guess I should say the directness of it. No, I don't like I often use this metaphor. I don't in pop music. Everyone knows pop music. You know, I prefer the records that aren't too overproduced, that aren't too smooth, where there's a drive directly to the audience. And so I wanted to. That's my debut poetry collection. I written really quick, just as my debut novel, really quick. And I just, as they say, in one wave, I like to write. First, I spent a long time, very different months with a poetry collection in my head or a novel in my head. But then once I get starting, it must go quick.
It comes.
And it comes, and it has to come quickly. And poetry is just really easy to that. You can, if you're really lucky, and that happens 1 or twice a year, you can write one poem in one day. Then you're really lucky. But that's an amazing feeling, and you can't ever do that with a novel,
What about Das Boot, number 4, which we chose for tonight? Did you write it in one vague, in one stream, or was it more difficult?
No,
Okay.
that's a poem of a series of poems that I wrote according to the work of 2 visual artists here in Belgium. And so I had to study their work, and I had to really try to contemplate and to answer that work. So that took me a little bit more time. It's about, this distinction between the outside and the inside. We all have an inside, but we all also have surroundings. Everyone lives in a world, and sometimes that distinction stops being there, and you feel like it's really coming close.
Please read it to us. Thank you.
All right. Here comes. Also, in a landscape that's too wide or too open, you might drown, like the man knows who, deep in the woods, succumbs to an overdose of trees. And the same applies to the underwater. You can be in an air pocket and still sense the droplets hesitantly feeling out your lungs. Retreat into your thoughts as if into an instinct. Take a deep breath there. Submerge yourself in scraps of nature, lying hidden deep inside your head, the untouched variants.
Thank you very much. For me, this poem is more about fear, Max. Do you think I'm crazy when I say that?
Yes.
Yeah? Too bad for you.
Too bad for me, because the reader is always right, of course.
Exactly. What is it about for you?
It's about solipsism, something like that. Having the sense that you're really alone in the world. Having the sense that you can drown in your surrounding, but also drown into yourself, and you can, having not enough air to just breathe. The lack of air, that's the main theme for me.
Okay.
So maybe you're right.
I'll read it again, okay? We do that. Laurent, your novel, De Donkerste Nacht, is your first novel, actually, and it had a huge success, probably because of the political side of your book. It's, of course, the extreme right, maneuver of the sun, which is amazing in your book. What kind of a man is he, Vas, the eldest son in your book? Could you describe him?
I think that this guy is lost. He lost a bit the dynamics of his life. Everything was built by his parents, and everything was going smoothly. And all of a sudden, because I wrote it in one sentence, I made his mother die. All of a sudden, he discovers himself being alone. I mean, with his brother, of course, and his father, but now he starts to become a bit more alone and trying to get some acquaintance, try to do other stuff. and this is a spiral that I try to describe in this book. How fast the spiral can go, how fast you can decline. So I think that I tried to keep this guy as friendly as possible all the time, because I didn't want people to judge him too fast and to put him in one camp. I wanted to keep a kind of connection with this with this Fus all the time. So I don't know if I succeeded, because, well, you might read the book very differently, but at least this is what I tried to achieve.
I have a question for both of you. Your novels are very different. They're situated in different social classes, but they have one thing in common, that is violence. There is, of course, obviously, Laurent, in your book, there is the murder that takes place by Fus, and Max, in your book, we get acquainted with an orphan who goes to the United States, and there also, out of the blue, it seems, he loses his senses, and there's this violence. Is this a thing in Belgium, France, Western Europe, perhaps? Is violence right under the surface? Why did it come to you to put violence at the heart of your books?
I like your question, because yesterday I was in Blois for a prize also, and actually all the 6 books being listed had that in common. Okay. And they, everyone was wondering why. I mean, we were so black. I mean, so dark in our writing, especially for first-time novels. I don't know. Maybe because, well, we. In this first novel, what you want is maybe to stretch a bit as much as you can the reality, to depict it, to situate a situation and have people think about it, and then you use the violence to trigger that. I'm not totally sure that the country by itself is more violent than any other one, but at least the way we write, yes, maybe we use that as a trigger.
Yeah. And your character, Max, there's no obvious reason why he would turn violent. In Laurent's book, there might be, because there's unemployment. So socially, it's a challenging environment, but not in your case.
No, not at all. I wanted with my debut novel to make an homage, anno 2020, to the work of Georges Simenon, the famous Belgian author. Laurent probably thinks he's a French author, but no, he was a Belgian author. And I really like the novels of Simenon. He described himself, his best novels, as a roman noir or roman dur, the black novels. And what's so fascinating in those novels is that he has lots of characters who do stuff they don't even know why they do it themselves. It just happens to them, and suddenly they do something. The main theme maybe of Georges Simenon, the psychological novels, is that we don't even know ourselves. Every knowledge starts with self-knowledge, but sometimes even self-knowledge isn't available. And I really like that idea. And so I wanted to do an homage to Simenon. Something dramatically had to happen. And so the underlying anger had to be there. It was a nice tool to use.
Now, you wrote letters to each other by mail. It was a really interesting correspondence, I must say. You will find the correspondence also on the website of the Bali after this evening. What struck me there was that in your correspondence, actually, you are both reluctant to publicly taking sides. You really don't want to say anything in public, certainly not when it's politics. Two quotes, first of all by Laurent. To me, the courage has been to write and then keep certain sentences or paragraphs when I knew that people I value and for some I love could read them with emotion, pain, or incomprehension. And for you, Max, you have, several answers to the question, but let's say the primary courage lies in perseverance. Why are you so reluctant to say anything in public? You are more concentrating on your family, you don't want to put people in pain. Is that also a form of courage for you as writers? Not writing, I mean?
I think that it's also, well, acknowledging that it's only my first novel. And acknowledging also the fact that the political context of this novel actually came very lately. So the main element to build this story was I knew that a son will deceive his father, but I didn't know how he would deceive him. Would it be through, drug dealing or something else? Actually, the political, context came as a solution to deceive the father. But it wasn't, at first sight, a political book by any means. So, indeed, like you mentioned earlier on, the success of the book is also due to that. Mm-hmm. But my first intent was not to write a political book.
And Max, you said the primary courage lies in perseverance. The second courage lies in the choice of your subjects, our mothers, and then there you are referring to the conversation you both had about your mothers and how difficult it was to write about your mothers, which is quite comprehensible, of course. And then the third may be a negative choice, consciously not writing about something. So that's a kind of, well, how do I read that?
Maybe it's not a popular standpoint, but I think, I'll speak for Belgium, but I do feel that I live in a country of a society where knowledge, having an opinion equals knowing something. And that's not the same thing. Everyone can have opinions. Writers have often too many opinions and are too much opinionated, I think, but they often, most cases, don't have the knowledge. And then the third wave is offer a solution that's even further on. And so, yeah, I am reluctant, and I think like another speaker said, we should all be humble, knowing the fact that sometimes you don't know. It takes courage to say that and to know that and to live with that. The courage of the writer, can literature change a country? Of course it can. I was thinking about John Steinbeck, preparing this evening, The Grapes of Wrath. He saw the land laborers in the Dust Bowl, America, 1930s. He was shocked by it. He went down there. He wasn't invited. Like the other speaker said, he went down there. Mm-hmm. He lived with them. He wrote articles about it. And then he wrote The Grapes of Wrath. And you know what? A year later, or soon later, American Congress passed new laws and their situation improved. A writer can do that, but you have to be willing, like Steinbeck, to spend months, years of your life studying the subject and going down there. And, that's the ultimate courage, of course, as a writer. But it takes commitment, 1000%.
The final word is for you, Laurent.
I have the feeling that we have the power. We have a certain power, actually. When you write a text, to at least to position a situation and question a certain number of things. And it's already very important. And for instance, in this book, well, I guess that a certain number of people question themselves. Okay, what would I do if my children were going totally in the other way? And actually, when I meet some readers, some of them say, "Well, you know, this is precisely that happened to me, and maybe I will give your book to my son, and we'll maybe discuss about that." So I think that it's already a huge power from the author to be able to put in place such a context and then let people think about it. Well, and then when you are becoming, well, maybe better known, for instance, Nicolas Mathieu, for instance, in France, it's true that he has very strong positions, and he's very right in having them, but well, he won a major prize in France.
I read today that 1/3 of the young French people are now thinking of voting for Marine Le Pen, so that makes your book even more relevant. Thank you for having been with us tonight. Thank you very much for your books, Coniferen and De Donkerste Nacht. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you. Bye.
We are now going to Switzerland, to Bern, where Chris Schneeberger is waiting for us. Chris, are you with us?
Yes, hi. You hear me?
Yeah, and we also see you. Welcome. Nice to see you again. Let me briefly introduce you, and I'm very happy to say that you are a published writer only since this year. Your first book came out this year, a novel entitled Neon Pink and Blue. And I will just quote from the biography that you included about yourself, where you write that Christopher Schneeberger danced under various names on many weddings. The texts that were created the morning after in those years flowed into this novel, Neon Pink and Blue, from the rave underground, from his life as political activist and drag queen. Chris, you've had a very successful year, but you're dressed in black. You're in a mourning dress. Why is that?
Right, I'm in a mourning dress because of the last Swiss votation. Maybe it's leading too far now to explain each case of mournings of this weekend. But just shortly, there is a new law implemented meant to be against terrorism, but be suspected to be one of the future measures against climate activists and racist activists and pro-refugee rights activists and, of course, feminists, I should mention first. And it's a case of mourning, and it's a case of despair, I have to admit.
Yeah. Switzerland, of course, elsewhere in Europe, people think of your country as the wealthiest country in Europe, perhaps also in line with that as the happiest country of Europe. But your book paints a rather different picture of Swiss society. And perhaps I can invite you first to read a very short excerpt from your novel.
Yes, I just have to say the wealthiest country in the world also means that when, in the case you're poor, you're very poor in comparison and in daily life and relation to your next, and that's probably the point, and now I read about it. The full winds has made the mountains larger and brought them within reach of the city, while flattening the land. They are right up in your face. The mountains are as if they had something to say. Meanwhile, it's bringing on a panorama headache. The straw hat was left with the other bundle, espadrilles and hoodie, back there under the weeping willow. So one is left hopping around bareheaded and barefoot, with cutoffs and a torn t-shirt in this heat. One can get ideas in the city on the lake, that one might be able to forget oneself until the next hangover, this landscape that is, and be blown away, cavity distressing fold like echoes. One dances in this city as if dancing for one's life. And those were precisely the stakes. A child more man-made than natural, a curvature of the spine, scoliosis, mechanically corrected in malleable infant pose. A small, upright person of clay, so to speak, a nubbin in other hands. And a little trick. At the time, there was no anesthesia for infants. The memory of this time is desolate and empty.
The scene goes from the Swiss mountains, like a postcard, to unspeakable cruelty against a child. And somewhere in the meantime, it also says that sometimes one should dance for one's life. You wrote the book, as I quoted, the morning after your underground life. And you also say at some point in the book that he who tells stories has survived. Where comes this almost existential urge about the writing? Where does it come from for you?
Well, we could start now by the queer biography of the author, which is always a fight about being seen or being seen the way you want to be seen, or this whole freak show disputes you have in your inner self all the time. But actually, by the end, it comes first from my family history that there were more than one person were in child and slavery. There was a system of child. How do you say that? Children who were not from adopted families socially, or also ethnically, in the sense of if there were traveling people, they were taken away from the family or of the one person nursing them, brought to other families who could systematically abuse them as slaves on their premises, in their houses, their households. And as this experience of history that was just acknowledged some years ago, comes then the very need to speak and to speak out.
Yeah. And for speaking out, you also found examples in the literature, in the German language, also in Swiss literature. There are references to Robert Walser and also to a kind of underground, right? People who did not qualify as mentally sane, that were put away. And was this a consolation for you to find these examples and to be able to refer to them?
In many means, I had to travel first to the US to to Washington, D.C. and to New York City. And also in the sense of literature, I had to make this travel. I had my coming out in New York City, and I had my entry to literature by James Baldwin, for example. Mm-hmm. First of all, and I had to hear and listen and read a language, the culture and the music that deals with the fact that your ancestors were slaves. And when you have it related to a skin color, you will not have the chance to forget or to avoid or to delete it. Switzerland, and also the people who survived this, didn't want to remember it. They deleted themselves. They deleted themselves in part of their own stories. Yeah. And because in the morning when they looked in the mirror, nobody themselves and nobody else would remember them or remind them of having been slaves. And so it was a real need to have a culture that deals with that fact.
Yes, if I may, I would like to ask already the last question to you, Chris. When I read the book, and we spoke already a little bit about that, I found the language extremely difficult. I read German, okay, but this is quite a language. It's like a tornado. It's a language tornado in which you are, thrown by you. And it goes very well with the subject, I think, because it's about how to survive in a way. It made me think of Virginie Despentes. We spoke about that. If we turn around the question, isn't this a book about surviving thanks to the power of language?
Yeah, as it is a novel, as it is a book, as it is literature, it is about survival in language. I hope, and I really need to be sure that there are many, many ways of survival, especially in this world right now, today, and in this Switzerland. But yes, the words are the place where you deal about your place in the world. And I grew up with examples of people who taught me as a child, listen, if you want to find your place, you have to speak out and listen. That's my story. Mm-hmm. For example, one person, and that's now one of the things that really cope directly in this abstract manner to my novel. One person said, listen, I was a slave. I was a slave for 12 years until the day I spoke out. This was the day of my liberation. If you have the chance to go to school and to go every hour to school and to learn the language around you and even more languages if possible, then you have more chances than others. I was taught that very early in my life that, school may suck, but learn to speak out.
Speak out, and you made a very impressive literary, work. You're part of the tree of literature now, I would say. Thank you very much for having been with us.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Phoebe.
Bye.
Bye, Chris. Bye. We are now going to Boštjan, Videmšek, and Maarja Kangro. Are you both with us?
Yes, we are. Yes, I am.
Welcome.
Yes.
Maarja Kangro from Estonia. Where are you in Estonia right now, Maarja? At home?
At the moment, I'm at home in Tallinn, and we are experiencing a heat wave. So around me, there is like a mild, warm soup of, let's say, 31 degrees or so. So I'm like swimming in the air.
Swimming in the soup, yeah.
It feels like that.
And Boštjan, you were this week, because you're a long-distance runner as well, you were running on Crete, but are you back in Slovenia now?
Yeah, just arrived, so I'm fresh here in front of my computer after some wilderness.
Yeah. So, in a sense, you are two very opposite writers. Boštjan, you are a journalist, also a very experienced war reporter, and a writer of non-fiction books. And Maarja, you are a poet, a translator, a novelist. You also wrote libretti for music, for opera. And for instance, your novel Child of Glass will appear in German translation, if I'm not mistaken.
It already was published 3 years ago, in 2018. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's a fabulous book, and and it's a fantastic read. And maybe because you also, like many other writers tonight, you exchanged letters. And perhaps I can first put a quote to you. It's a quote from you, Maarja. You are saying, maybe I'm seeing things from an overly cynical perspective, but when I look at myself or at certain colleagues, it seems that vanity is beating fear by far in so many situations. So I think writers, or at least I, should be careful before going chest beating, like, oh, aren't we writers courageous? Certainly several of us are, but it's also part of our job. So you're skeptical.
Yeah, I guess so. So I really felt a bit embarrassed to talk about writers' courage. It would have been so much easier to talk about courage in general, or citizens' courage, or the courage of a musician or an artist. But being a writer myself, are we supposed to be courageous? Somebody has picked us out of a certain, corpus of other writers. Someone certainly must think that we are courageous, but all this pathos and heroism that is involved, it really feels like boasting. And boasting is not a nice thing, I think. Or at least this is how I was raised. So, and of course, the other thing that I want to emphasize is that when I was asked to exchange letters with Boštjan, that was an edifying experience to me, because Boštjan is like an epitome of a good guy. He's, as you said, he has been a war reporter, now he's a climate activist, he looks like a movie star, and then there's me, somebody from a safe bourgeois world, a lazy middle-class skeptical writer who relishes cynical authors like Thomas Bernhardt or Philip Larkin or Edward St. Aubyn. So it's absolutely clear to whom the public prize should go. And I would give my award to Boštjan as well.
Okay. Well, Boštjan, this begs for a response from the most perfect guest of the evening.
Of course, yeah, I honestly think he is.
I mean, this is a perfect alibi now for you. You know, I will hide now. I've got nothing to say. You know, you have completely discouraged me. You know, I mean, we do similar things. We communicate. We all who are here do similar things. We try to educate people around us. This is our job. And to say it loud, it's not boosting, and it's not chest bumping. I mean, we have in my opinion, not the mission, but a job to do. It's not only fulfilling your own ambitions, it's making the surroundings, the environment around yourself better. So is it fiction, is it non-fiction, is it poetry, or is it prose? Is it journalism, or is it documentary way of storytelling? In my opinion, it's the same thing. But when we talk about courage, and if we talk about the courage of a writer this evening, of course it's a cliche to say it's stepping out of your comfort zone, but if you are not playing against the odds, if you're not taking the risks, in my opinion, there is no personal or professional progress. Because if you don't step out and check out what is going out there and try to, put your hands and legs and mouth in shit and in all, body liquids, it's very hard to credibly talk about the reality.
Yeah.
And what else is our job than to talk and write about reality?
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Yeah. And I think it's, in a way, it's already included in being a writer, or it should be like the default state of a writer to be courageous to a certain extent.
Can
Yeah. Okay. You want to say?
Yeah. I'm dying to invite you to read the poem that we that I asked you to read, the poem "Pig."
Oh.
Also because talking about reality, and which Boštjan was right now saying, that's the sort of the ultimate object or topic for all writers, whether they're poets or non-fiction writers. And I think what is so special about this particular poem is the way it faces us with a certain reality. So this is why I invited you to read this poem. Please go ahead.
Okay, I will. So this is a poem that plays with the Hegelian idea of history being a spiral, but it also kind of mocks this ideology of, or this nationalist concept of going back to one's roots, because maybe if we go far enough, we really don't want to arrive there anymore. And the poem is titled Pig, and it's translated into English by Mike Horwood. The pig. I heard it on the radio. In ancient times, the pig strolled freely around the house, eating man's shit. It grew fat, had a litter. The man then killed the pig and ate it. After dinner, he went to a bush, somewhere behind the house. The pig's offspring knew the smell, went to the bush to eat, and so on. Then it turned out that history was a spiral. Returning to the roots, the pig took along many finer tools and more articulate attitudes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I now also realize when you introduce it in the way you did that it is also an ironical poem about going back to one's roots, which is also part of many nationalist ideologies. The thing that first struck me and why I invited you to read it is because it also shows how intimate people are with animals and nature, and not always aware of it, and often also denying it, right? This is what makes your poem funny, but also slightly disgusting, if I can say so. So there is this, talking about reality, this is, I think, an eminent example of how poetry can, make you aware, and you don't want this awareness, but it's, that type of reality created by yourself is right there. And Boštjan, if I can turn to you, your latest book is also about this, this very stressful and problematic relationship between human beings and their natural surroundings. The book is called Plan B. What is this book about, and why did you write it?
It's Plan B, how not to lose hope in the times of climate crisis. The subtitle tells more than the title, I suppose. It's a collection of... I don't think it's stressful. It's quite opposite. After so many years spent on front lines and achieving nothing as a writer, I mean, majority of conflicts I was covering are still ongoing. So we live in the age of never-ending wars, never-ending conflicts. Just mention one war after, I don't know, 2011, after 9/11, which has stopped. There is none. So with the frustration and kind of trauma that my work didn't change anything, of course. The inspiration was there always to do that. I have invested my time, everything, into fight, let's say, with the climate crisis, which I call the main frontline of humanity, not only humanity, of course. And the way I started working on the project was completely different than before. I mean, majority of my work was based on describing consequences of human-based tragedies. That's fucking simple. You go there, you tell it, you see it, you talk to people, you tell it. You know, it's your own choice. It's not courage, it's choice. Wherever you have choice, there's no courage involved. And I was doing this for more than 20 years. And then I decided, okay, it's not working. I'm gonna do something different. And there is a school of journalism or a style of journalism now, it's becoming more and more popular, and it's called constructive journalism. So I have decided, as somebody who has seen things, let's put it like that it's time to do something constructive, to build or to write a manual of a fight with the consequences of climate change. So I went out there together with the photographer, Škrob, and we traveled around the world, actually, to find the best practices of already existing practices, not science fiction built, or practices how people, small communities, islands, cities, even countries are dealing and fighting with the climate crisis. And the idea was to locate the main factors why these communities have reacted and why have they changed their attitudes. And it was, of course, the first was that they were endangered by the climate change directly. It was not phantasma or something metaphysical, or maybe for them, you know. So, and then you had the really courageous individuals who have risked their own, I don't know, status in community or in their families, wherever, in their professional environment, to pull to drag the community behind them, behind their idea that it's time to change the paradigm of life, mostly social, you know. And then with of course, with the development of technology, which is here, and we can do whatever we want with it, things have progressed. So the point is, without the change of social paradigm, you cannot do anything with the technology. With the technology, it's as such, it's an empty shell which can be easily turned into weapons.
Yeah. So there has been technical progress, and there has also been technical change, and one has been really affecting writing, and it's the rise of social media. And I can imagine that as a journalist, this has been an enormous, profound change. I'm also wondering, Maarja, in poetry, social media often uses short forms. Twitter has, I don't know, a very limited number of characters. And of course, we tend to think of the rise of social media as, something that has accelerated communication and perhaps even endangered the way we communicate through literature. But how do you look upon this as a poet?
Oh, that's a difficult question, because me as a poet, I do not have any ties with the social media. It's me as a person who has an account on Facebook that I mainly use, and sometimes I also use or have a look at Twitter. I have some friends who are poets and who post their poetry on social media, and some of them claim to be writing directly there. So they say that it gives them a special kick, this awareness that they are doing it live, that there is the audience right now, right there, and whatever they post is like has been freshly created, and then gets also a fresh feedback. But I never enjoyed that because I think I have too many doubts maybe about what I'm writing. I want to have a second look, a second opinion from myself on what I have just written. But I have been kind of politically active on Facebook, especially at the time when in 2019 a far-right party was included in our government, and then I was having these social media fights and battles. Well, it's easy to, I'm tempted to say to no avail, but I think it's not completely useless because you become clearer about your opponents. You become more aware of the strategies and also of you get to the point where you see that it's a technical program, changing people's attitudes. Like, well, Boštjan said before that without changing attitude, there is no, no advantage of the technologies. But I think on the, then again, it's kind of a, technical question or a question of strategy, tactics, how to change people's attitudes, how to change the way they perceive themselves, how to change the way they look at their own position in the world. It's very easy to manipulate with people who perceive some kind of a lack of recognition. And that's, of course, one of the main tools for the far-right parties, that they use this feeling of those who feel that they have been deprived of prestige and recognition. It's not that much in our world, at least, the lack of resources, like economic or physical resources, but it's the lack of recognition. And of course, it's very easy to get carried away. And then I'm not a very good diplomat, so I tend to radicalize very, very fast, and so that's also quite often the end of a real discussion. It's like you start throwing bombs at each other, and this is to no avail at all.
Yeah. I'm also afraid that I have to end our discussion here. I'm very sorry we're so short with time, but I do invite people to read your exchange of letters, which is funny, entertaining, moving, and also to, of course, to listen to the podcast that the students made together with you. So I want to thank you very much for being here with us tonight, and
thanks for inviting. Yes.
Hopefully we'll meet again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we are going to the Czech Republic, to Jan Škrob. Jan, are you with us?
I'm here. Good evening.
Good evening, Jan. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I imagine it's waiting that long before it's your turn to come to the virtual stage. And I think what I might do before further introducing you is to invite you to read one of your poems. so that the people here and listening at home will get a taste of what you make, what you write.
Right. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank Teresa Novicka, who is the translator of my poems to English. And the name of the poem is Face to the Wall. Our future has been plundered in advance. It's almost pitch dark. In the corner, a younger woman is standing, dagger in hand, face to the wall, tattooed, tense, shoeless, in a knee-length wrecked dress. As soon as you enter, she turns around, she has black eyes. She says, our present day is a betrayal. You notice she's crying. It's almost pitch dark. In the corner, a younger woman is standing on her tiptoes, face to the wall, tattooed, tense, shoeless, in a knee-length blue dress. As soon as you enter, she turns around, she has blue eyes. She says, I begin and won't cease till death. You can see she's smiling. It's almost pitch dark. You stand by the window. A storm rages outside. You don't sleep that night, sampling snow, white cotton wool.
Thanks, Jan. It's from a collection of poetry called Real, which you explained in one of your letters means approximately reality, the real. Let me also put a quote to you from one of the letters that we exchanged, where you say, I am a left-wing extremist. That's what they call people like me for envisioning more freedom, more equality, more joy in this world. I don't know if a writer should choose sides. I just know that I do. Jan, a left-wing extremist, what did you do to deserve this label?
Well, that's a difficult question, because as far as I'm concerned, I haven't done anything that would, go against my idea of what's, decent or okay. But maybe it's also because I live in a country that has still a deep trauma of a political regime that claimed to be left-wing, that nowadays, when you claim that, the society needs more equality, more justice in the sense of, material, on the material level, but also in other senses of the world, a lot of people are very easily suspicious, and my opinions have nothing to do with the regime in Czechoslovakia before 1989, but often, or not me personally, but people with opinions like mine are often seen as people who want to revive that kind of politics, which is very far from true. But I think that's the reason why, specifically in the Czech society, a lot of people get angry when you affirm what could be called left-wing values in the most general sense.
Yeah, Margot already earlier tonight referred to one of your statements that whenever you write a poem, nobody seems to notice or care, but when you put something on social media, it's all over the place. So what is the role of poetry then? Why do you write poetry?
Well, it's a difficult question also. I think I may be naive or idealistic, but I still believe that poetry does make a difference. Maybe not for so many people, but there are people who read poetry, and there always will be some people who read poetry. And I think that, for example, nowadays in the Czech Republic, the number of people who read poetry is increasing, maybe slowly and maybe I'm making it up. Maybe it's not true, but that's how I feel when I, when I sense what's around me. More and more people are interested in poetry, and it's my deep belief that poetry may change heart. And maybe now I'm very active on social media and on Twitter, but I'm very skeptical regarding what I can actually achieve by writing stuff on Twitter. I don't think that people I criticize, for example, will change their minds when they read a tweet I wrote. I think it's much more likely that when they read a poem I wrote, it's much more likely that they will, if I use a cliche choice of words, they open their hearts and they will at least try to understand what I mean and how I feel. And I don't think social media in general is a space when people want to open their hearts to anything. Now, when I'm speaking about it, I realize I really don't know why I do it. Why I spend so much
Stop
time
it immediately.
Yeah. It's how it is. It's maybe most of us. It's what most of us do, and that's part of our lives. But I think that, in this sense, poetry has much more potential than social media.
Now, Jan, you exchange letters via mail with Guido. He's a writer as well, of course. And I know that, for having read that you are a committed Christian as well. And there are references to faith in your poetry. In what way, you say also you wrote to Guido, all writing is ultimately about love. Is courage needed in that way, to speak about love, to speak as a Christian today?
Well, I have to say that before I was invited for this event, I really didn't think about what I do in terms of courage. It's not how I see myself actively. But when I think about it, it's definitely the case. I definitely agree that courage does play a role, and it's an important role. But I would say that specifically at our age and in Europe, even though it's not, always so clear and so self-evident, we have a relative luxury of being able to speak our minds. And the most important courage, in my opinion, is to be true to yourself. To be sincere and to actually write what you want to write, because it's easy to, I want to write something, but I don't think people would understand. People would get upset. It's something you have to, it's something you have to ignore because I don't think it has to be the case with prose so much, but it's definitely the case with poetry, in my opinion, that you have to be completely open in the sense that you can't censor yourself. It has to be you. It has to be full you. And to illustrate it, when usually I don't know what to say when people ask what I write about, because I feel I write about everything. I write about everything I feel. I write about what happens, what's happening around me, and I can't really analyze what it's about. It's my life. It's my heart.
You also, last question, unfortunately, but you also wrote, perhaps it is courage to allow oneself to be disliked by some people. So sincerity, it's been talked about already tonight, is a quality needed for poetry, perhaps, and that takes you here sometimes, doesn't it? You have to speak out, knowing that you will perhaps confront people or provoke people. Are you aware of that when you write?
Yes, absolutely. It's when I write. within the process of writing, I don't think consciously about these things. It's afterwards when I think more about what to publish and when, and so on. But I believe that to be true to yourself, to be sincere, to really be you, as I said, you are always going to end up with some people disliking what you have to say. When you try to please everyone, you end up not pleasing anyone, really, and not really. I don't believe that anyone who will write from their heart can do so, making everyone happy. It's impossible, I think.
Yeah. Well, your poem certainly made me very happy, Jan. I can sincerely say so, without any irony.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for being with us here tonight. And we'll certainly be in touch.
Thank you very much for having me.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Now we're going to our last guest, the last but not the least, Andrea Bajani. Great to have him, hopefully somewhere. Andrea Bajani is an Italian writer, poet, a literary and cultural critic, a journalist, a teacher at universities as well. He's translated in many languages. In Dutch, among others, we have Het leven is niet alfabetisch. Life is not alphabetical, and Het hoogste goed. Yes, there you are, Andrea. Hi, great to have you.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
I was just telling the audience who you are, what you have been writing, and well, welcome. Wonderful to have you. One good thing in the world is the other title we can read in Dutch. It's kind of a fairy tale about a boy with a grief, a sorrow, which is given a character, a life. It resembles a dog. I love this book. It's really a beautiful book, as well as the others. But now you are not in the US, Andrea, where you were only a few days ago. You are in Salerno because it's a great day for you, isn't it? You have been nominated for 2 marvelous literary prizes.
Yeah, so basically I'm on tour, so every night I'm somewhere. Usually I'm not even sure where I am, but I can always say I'm here. And yeah, because of these 2 nominations that are great, but we are basically on a ban for 1 month. And yeah, we are happy to be nowhere and to be happy to be nominated.
Every time we speak to each other, you say, oh, my life is a chaos. And that's why I'm writing. Is there some line between the chaos and the writing?
Oh, yeah, of course, because basically words are kind of people who think that they are right, that they have a reason, that there's a logic in things. I mean, words are just kind of the army of our brain, but life, everybody knows that life is completely meaningless and it's completely chaotic. And so basically literature is always this kind of fight. And as Samuel Beckett said, the task of an artist is to find a way to accommodate the mess. And that's what it is. And that's why also it's so comfortable writing and reading as well, because you always pretend, or you always think, you always believe that there's a sense that you can draw a line, and that this line is the journey you're gonna get, you're gonna try to do to get to the sense of life. And then, thank God, you never find the sense of life so that you can write another book to look for it.
So that's how you see the role of the writer then, to make peace out of chaos, not only for yourself, but only for the reader.
Yeah, at least to find a house for the chaos. I don't believe that we should find peace, but at least because I think that literature and writing is to find a place for complexity, not to simplify. And so it's this idealistic and impossible task, the one to not simplify, not to ask the word to become easy, understandable, but to make this bet that you can host chaos.
Now, we have been speaking, well, maybe you have not been able to watch this, of course, because you were in this big party. But we have been speaking for 2 hours about courage in literature and how writers in Europe deal with that. But listening to you, I'm asking myself, is courage needed to write?
Just now I could join the evening 20 minutes ago, and so I had the luck that I could listen to some of my colleagues. And what I was thinking is that a few years ago I had big troubles with my back, and so I went for a visit. And I asked to solve my problems. That's why you go and pay. And they said, you have a problem. And I said, okay, I have more problems, but what about my back? And she said that you have two opposite instincts. One thing is that you are scared, so your shoulders are kind of hunchbacked. But you are very curious, and so your head tries to go towards the world, and so that's why you have this problem. And so I said, so what should I be? Less brave, less curious, more brave? What's the problem? And this doctor told me you have to buy a pillow, and that was the practical problem. But about being brave or not, about courage, I guess this is, for me, I was thinking now, it's not something I thought 20 days ago, is to not stop being curious. I guess curious, meaning that literature and writing is, even if you are a coward, and I guess I'm a coward man, I'm not a courageous, I'm not brave as a man, but still as a writer, I can't stop it. I don't want to stop trying to have my head going towards things that I don't know. And in the things I don't know, and this instinct of going there, for me, is the courage of literature. And as soon as you stop going towards the things you don't know, because maybe you are scared that something is going to happen. So that is the very point in which literature dies. The moment in which you stop daring, in which you stop thinking that you want to know more. Maybe your back will be better, but you will be a terrible writer.
Now, we had this very nice podcast with you as well, with the students of the University of Amsterdam last week. And if I may, I would like to quote what you said to them. To be true means to be brave. The key word is candor. So courage is being frank, to be genuine, to be upright. How do we imagine that? How do we think about that?
I would say that, my colleague, the one who came just before me, said something that I agreed very much on, but the candor is a key word for me. It comes from English, but it comes from a poem by N. Carson, who basically defined the candor as this instinct of saying something that is true about you, but it's true about you even if disconnected. The need to write and to say the truth without the necessity of publishing it. In a sense, the candor of writing is this writing the truth that you need to do, and that doesn't have to be connected at all with the audience, with success, with nothing that is having a reward. So that's the courage of maybe writing a novel for 40 years, for 5 years, 40 years, forever, without even having the chance or without thinking that it's the right moment to publish it and to look for rewards or success by readers or people or whatever.
So there is for you, and that will be my last question, no political side to having courage, to being courageous?
This is a very political thing. I mean, I don't think that I think that this attitude of saying the truth, I mean, we have in the Italian tradition, we have at least 2 people who had the courage to say the truth. One was Antonio Gramsci, that was imprisoned under Mussolini, and he died there. And the other one was Silvio Pellico, again imprisoned, and many others. So saying the truth doesn't mean that you have to say the truth to yourself about your relationship with your grandmother or whatever. Saying the truth to yourself is, for instance, could be basically summarized in being free, and being free in thinking and consequently acting is a very political attitude.
I think that we will have to do the roundup.
Yeah.
Unless you have a burning question, Guido.
No, I had a fantastic question, but you already answered it. I wanted to ask you about, because one thing that strikes the readers of your books immediately is the fantastic style. Your books seem to be, at first glance, all about style. It is charming, it is brave, and I wanted to ask you if there is such a thing as aesthetic courage. That was my question, but maybe you already answered it, but perhaps you do see an angle to say something about it. Aesthetic courage.
Yeah, Guido, while you were talking, I was thinking that nowadays, which there's a moment of just asking for stories, not about the way the stories are told, and not the style that is used, and it's a time of prose. Even if it's true that poetry is, there's a good moment for poetry because we are living in such a meaningless time that people are looking for a sense. But today, thinking that style, so spending so many hours because you want that your phrase has a sound, and that the sound has a meaning, and that the meaning becomes imagery and emotions in the reader. This means to be brave, because it means that you are ready to lose lots of readers in order to just achieve beauty, and it is brave today in a way to slow down, to ask readers not to rush, not to say, I would like to have on my books to have written, oh, this is a very slow book, or you need at least 3 months. The opposite of what now is the idea that speed is everything. And so being involved so much in style, and so asking the reader to slow down because he has to go through or to swim or to surf a phrase in a specific way. Today you are brave, but as a writer you are happier because writing is a process of knowledge. And if I didn't learn anything while writing, I usually write, and that's my way of thinking. So I'm helped by a language. So if I didn't have that, I would have maybe more readers, but I would be a little bit more shallow as well, and a little bored.
This is a beautiful thing you said, because by mentioning the slow reading, we come back to what our Dutch writer Nelleke Noordervliet discussed in her lecture on the European state of European literature. She talked with Eva Meijer and other people present about the necessity of bring back slow reading and slow life a little bit into our lives. Thank you very, very much for having been with us, Andrea, Bajani.
Thank you.
And we hope you will have both prizes today.
Yes. Yeah, if only
Congratulations. Hopefully.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Well, that brings us to the end of a wonderful panorama, Guido.
Yes.
What do you think?
Well, I'm a bit overwhelmed. I think we never got a straight answer, the courage of the writer, but we did not go for a straight answer. I think I learned a lot. I'm especially happy that we had so many voices from all over Europe. I think courage is a key issue of our time in Europe, but it's also a very different key issue from wherever you look at it in Europe.
You think that those people we spoke with have not been honest to us? Is that
no? They've been very honest,
Yeah.
but there are extremes these days in Europe. The situation is very different depending on where you are, and of course you know my affinity with Central and Eastern Europe. And there is a very long tradition there of writers having to be courageous and often not wanting to be, but they have no choice.
Well, I think there is what you're saying. There is what struck me most this evening is that there are so many aspects to courage, and we have heard journalists and people who are publishing books on climate, and we have also heard writers speak about how difficult it is to be honest to themselves on paper, like Andrea and like Maarja in a certain way.
Yeah.
She had that also.
Yeah.
I think there are so many aspects on the courage as there are characters in Europe,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, yeah. I'm also wondering if there's such a thing as European courage. And I'll
dear.
Yeah, I'll think about it the whole coming free day tomorrow. But it still is, because I don't think that Nelleke Noordervliet came up with this theme for no reason. And perhaps the Netherlands is a spoiled country, it's a wealthy country, but perhaps I should say even here, or especially here, we have to think about this. You know, why would people write? Well, because there's something to say, and it's not the obvious thing to say, so maybe you need courage for that.
I'm sure of that, and I think the theme of the courage also reflected the necessity of having writers in our midst and of telling stories about what is happening in Europe and in the world. The storytelling is essential, and I agree completely with Nelleke Noordervliet and Eva Meijer, who said, we should defend literature. We should really say how important it is. We tend to, well, say that reading an Excel sheet is much more important than reading a poem or a novel, which is absolutely not true. Of course, it's nice if you can do the things on the Excel sheets. I cannot. I'm much better in reading words and trying to understand what they reflect and what they are about. But that means that you try to get a grasp of what life is about and what human relationships are about. And I think that is what we have seen tonight.
Yeah. I have nothing to add, Margot.
No, yeah. Well, yeah. I'm sure you have, but you're too honest. Okay, well then, thank you very much for having been with us. Get inspired and be courageous.
Be courageous.
Be courageous.
Thank you. The courage of the writer, but I want also thank the courage of the organizers, because this was really beautiful, and that you used all the possibilities we now have, the opportunities to work with your students, to have a video, to have all this, the whole evening in a live stream, to have recorded interviews. I'm so much impressed. And thank you, our working group of Eunic Netherlands. Thank you for all the effort. And I hope the public, the audience, as I know, all over Europe, I heard a lot of voices. Yes, I'm looking tonight from Germany, from northern countries, from France. So I hope you all enjoyed also this evening and learned a lot about the courage of the writer. And I had a lot of inspiration to buy some new books. Thank you, Margot. Thank you, Guido.